good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this talk on health, wealth, and leadership. Um, if you don't know these two, you should, and if you don't, you will know them at the end of this conversation. These two are incredible men. I'm not going to do the whole bio, but you know they're absolutely awesome. So wanted to start out and jump right into the health conversation. We were having a great conversation before, some of the best things that you do are before you get on camera, right? Or before you start recording. So we already had a great conversation, but now you guys get to hear it. Yeah. So wanted to jump in with health with you, Phil. I know we were talking about it over there, and health is a big part of everything that you do. So talk to us about just the importance of being healthy. Just talk to us there and start.
Right, so there's this idea and I call it fitness alpha. And that's like a language that people in the finance community can understand. Excess return that you get from whatever, right? And so there's an excess return that you can derive from health. And there are multiple attributes. For example, your energy level, your ability to tolerate stress, your ability to focus, your patience, your strength, your resilience, ability to bounce back fast. All of these are affected by, and so there's behavioral, emotional, and thinking, your decision making, your executive functioning and brain functioning. So all of these are affected by how you treat your body, your apparatus. Brain is part of the body, right? It's not separate. Mind is not separate. It's all connected. And so there's a huge amount of alpha that we can derive from taking care of our mind and spirit and body. And it affects us. It's great for people in finance because markets are so stressful. Yeah. And so, for example, 2022, right? Tough year. You wake up on a Thursday morning after the market got hammered Wednesday and Tuesday and Monday, and we're down, whatever we were, 25, 30% on the NASDAQ at one point. Yeah. And you are stressed. And then what do you have? You have clients calling you up. You're in the advisory space. You have clients calling you up, and they're schwitzing, right? They're worried. And so that ability to tolerate stress, to bounce back fast, incredibly important in the markets, in performance. I call that, that's performance. It's whether you're involved with markets or whatever you do for a living. But it's also you also derive alpha over the long term in terms of your health span, in terms of how long you remain healthy. So, whether your health starts to falter when you are 50, or whether you're 55, or whether you're 75, or whether you're 90. So it hits, and also performance in other areas of life, like interpersonal, your family, your ability to be a parent, your ability to be patient with your kids, and all of those types of things. So that idea of fitness alpha, to me, is just really, really important, and I think it's a motivation to anyone, all humans.
Yeah, absolutely. President, I know it looked like you had something to say over there, P.
Well, fitness alpha, we all have terms for different things, right? But investing in oneself, compoundable assets. What are we putting into ourselves? What are we investing in? How are we starting our day? How do we find this, inspiration every day? And it's okay to not have, prime self every day. Sometimes it's just putting 2 on the ground. That's it. That is the asset for the day. Just finding oneself, because that takes courage to find oneself to start some days. Some days are just not rah every day, and we can compound off of that because at least we started. All right, but most of the time, if we can stay consistent with the things that we invest in ourselves, these are compoundable. How are we, how are we being mindful? How are we expressing gratitude every day, having a gratitude list. I start my day however you want to start it. It could be prayer, it could be, I kicked off the day with this great day. And I stopped for a second before I left the hotel. I said, let me pause for a second. We're about to do all of this and give our energy to the festival and this and that. What energy are we giving ourselves, and what energy are we giving, to the energy, the spirit. And I had to pause and be mindful of, what brought me here, to extend to the world. So that's mindfulness, that's affirming oneself, that's smiling in the mirror, and smile at yourself. The mirror is a great audit. The mirror is a great audit, not only in times of trial, but also triumph. It's the greatest storyteller, and the greatest healer too. You get in that mirror, it can talk back at you.
Does not lie.
And does not lie. Does not lie. It's never lied, actually.
Absolutely. We were talking about this. This is the pre-meeting before the meeting, so we'll let you in on that. So we were talking about gratitude, and I went out and made a bold statement and said gratitude is essential for health. And understand this. I said gratitude is essential for health. This is why. So we were talking about this, and we were talking about journaling and whatnot. So we were talking about journaling, and my wife and I just recently bought a house. And we were in the house, and we were starting to look at everything that we needed to fix. You build a new house, you got to fix this, you got to fix that, and we got consumed by everything that we had to fix. And one day, I noticed that because we had moved and I was out of my routine, I wasn't waking up in the morning doing my meditation, doing my stuff that I normally do, and this had led us to this place where we were having elevated stress levels. And I know you guys know nothing about stress, right? Nothing at all. So we have these elevated stress levels about focusing on the other things outside of being grateful for what we had. And what I noticed is that I had stopped journaling. I wasn't journaling nearly as much as I was because we had to move and I wasn't doing everything that I normally did. But what happened was I got back to journaling and I got to write down what I was grateful for. And then I went back and I was able to talk to my wife and I said, Marty, you know what? We haven't been focused on being grateful. And it was crazy. We put that energy out and then things just started to click. Everything else started to work. Things got better for us with work. Things got better for her at work. Things got better with the kids. It was just incredible what gratitude did and what doors it unlocked for us with our own health, right? And so I think that as we're talking about health, think about your involvement in there. Where are you spending your time? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? What kind of thoughts are you having? And are you being nice to yourself? Right? And
honest. So, I came up with this thing called an honest self audit. It's a emotional HSA. So we got first of all, I love me some HSA, by the way. The HSA is the greatest thing literally since sliced bread. I mean, you got tax deferral going in the middle and going out.
Yeah.
I mean, please get you some HSA. Mm-hmm. But the emotional HSA is an honest self audit about yourself. When you're sitting down, how are you auditing yourself? And I actually keep, the journaling, right? I actually keep a letter to myself, and I wrote myself a letter back when, I had this tagline called Life, Money, Balance, and your money is working in partnership in order to accomplish your goals. And when they're going in opposite directions. It doesn't feel good at all. And so at a time to where these life and money were going in opposite directions, I pinpointed that. And I said, where is my life going? And where is my money going? They're going in opposite directions. So I wrote myself a letter and reminded myself. I pulled my statements, my bank statements, and they were ugly, but so was my life at the time. And so I was honest with myself about what that ugliness was. It wasn't ugliness just being harsh on myself, but it actually was. It was honest. And I said, how do I align these two? And I actually had that in the envelope. And when I go off course, and sometimes that's okay, but I pull that and read that to myself. And that's an honest audit.
What you guys are talking about reminds me a lot of identity and who we are, identity development. And we have the ability to construct our reality and to define ourselves. And that doesn't stop when, like Freud going all the way back, he was like, by the time you're 8, you're done. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're crazy, you're going to be crazy. If you're, a psychopath, you're going to be a psychopath. He's totally wrong about that. Genius, but wrong about that. We have the ability to reconstruct our reality every day, no matter how old we are, how young we are. And we have the ability to reconstruct who we are, our own identity. So that act, like both of you guys are talking about the same thing. You're talking about writing down. You were talking about writing down, I'm grateful. And that was the statement you said to me. I am grateful. You said it, then you wrote it down the next day. I am grateful. And you got back to journaling and everything sunk back in. And what you were doing there on every level, you're doing it on a behavioral level, emotional level, even on a neurophysiological level. What you're doing is you're making that statement about yourself. You are claiming that identity. So you might not have been, maybe you were ungrateful. You know, there's people out there who are, you know, people, a few of you, but people sitting out here right now who might not be the most grateful people, but you have that ability to be able to reframe yourself anytime that you want. And it was an incredible exercise that you did. You just basically got yourself back on track, you know? We could do that in all different types of areas too. We can go from being, hey, you know, I'm lazy to, hey, I'm really active. Or, hey, I'm ungrateful to, hey, I'm grateful. We could do it about almost anything.
I would say, like, as we go into, so what is, I love asking this question because I think it has everything to do with this, but what does this have to do with wealth? Like, what does your health have to do with wealth?
So I got something for you. So 1,000 years ago, if we look at the etymologies of the word health and wealth, they come from the same word from Old English 1,000 years ago. I can't pronounce it because there's letters, like I looked it up and there's letters that don't look like, I don't even know what they are. There's like an A and an E that are
Greek or
connected
Latin
or something.
something.
I got no idea.
Roman numerals.
But I think it's pronounced something like health, like there's a little, you know, whatever, terrible. But they're derived from the same word. And in both etymologies is the word fitness and how fit we are. So whether it's financially fit, you use that term, right? Mm-hmm. Financially fit or physically fit and emotionally fit. And so they have everything to do with each other. In fact, if you look at there's a million similarities, but if you think about long-term planning, long-term wisdom, what do we do today that will affect us down the road? And can we visualize that? Hey, who do I want to be at that time? What is my identity then? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and we can visualize that. We can construct that reality. We can make that happen with our actions, and with our deeds, and with our words, both in the area of wealth, how responsibility we are, we hang in there, we just keep buying, as Nick says, or in the health realm, do we do those same types of things with that visibility out, long-term time perspective?
Ask yourself honest. There we go back with honesty again, right? Ask yourself, when your money wasn't right, were you actually healthy in the wellness paradigm? In the wellness paradigm, we're talking about physical fitness, spiritual fitness, your human condition fitness. Where were you? Just think back, at your time, and pretty much everyone is probably going to ask. I wasn't my greatest health. I wasn't my greatest person in all that paradigm. When we talk about, financial wellness as a whole, all right, it is on a continuum. When we talk about, financial or just life compassion, we're talking about giving ourselves compassion, giving ourselves some grace, investing in oneself. Before we start investing in compoundable financial assets, we have to invest in ourselves. I always say that the greatest, compoundable asset is you can give a young person or even throughout life, because you say you can continue, you can still change your life at 25. It's self-worth and self-value. I got those inputs early. Self-worth and self-value. You give self-worth and self-value to a human being early and through your life, and you can rekindle that. You can go give me a phone. My dad calls them shuns. He said self-worth, self-value, get you communication, shun, right? Some transportation, and you can go conquer the world. All right. So that's how you go get wealth. Is you have self-wealth first, and then you can go get you some financial wealth. You can't do one without. You can't do that. The horse before the carriage. Another thing that my pop say, and I'm pretty sure you heard this before, that's ass backwards.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. You need that self wealth, health, on all across the paradigm before you get to the financial health.
Absolutely. I think that when you're thinking about wealth or you're thinking about health, I think that they're, forever married in my opinion. And this is why, like, when you think about, like you were talking about it, you stated like when you're thinking about how healthy you were in relation to your wealth. Like, if you had financial means, it changes the way that you feel, right? There is something different. It's like there's not the adage says more money, more problems. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if that's true.
Maybe less.
Maybe less problems. But what I'd say is, like, how are you tying your health and wealth together? This is something that I've been able to see when I track stuff. I think tracking what you do personally is very important. Okay, like when you go to the gym and you're working out, if you work out, it's important to track your weight, right? You don't just go in there and lift without knowing how much you lifted to go from one day to the next. And I think that that's very similar with your wealth. Now, what I'm saying is this: when I can track the days that I actually woke up, went to the gym, journaled, meditated, and read whatever it is for me, that's my thing. I can look at those days and I can see the level of productivity change on those days. And so when I know I'm going to have a good month, it's how many of those days I had, right? And those days are going to lead into what I'm trying to create because I've been consistent, right? And consistency is life's cheat code.
Yeah.
Whatever you're consistent at, you will become. People know you. Like, if you're always late, people call you late. If you're always on time, people call you on time. If you do certain things because of who you become the habits you practice, right? And so if we're trying to build wealth, I think that it's important that we work on our personal habits that are going to lead to the success that we want.
Yep. And then you can reinvest in those bad boys too.
Compound.
Right.
Talking about that compounding, don't be talking about that.
You can reinvest in those.
Stop that, Dr. Cherry.
Right. I mean,
stop that, Dr. Cherry. Don't be talking about that.
If you don't, right? If you don't have good habits going in, as far as yourself, then they're going to be revealed when you get wealth. They're going to be compounded. That's why we have sudden wealth. You get a whole bunch of money and then it goes out the door. How were you going in? That's why. There's nothing wrong. Listen, y'all, there ain't nothing wrong with getting this money. All right. You can get money as long as it doesn't define you. I share with people all the time, like Rocky 1, right? Rocky 1. It was Rocky and Adrian, right? And he said, "Real Adrian, I want to get you the best things in the world. I want to do this. I want to do that." Adrian said, "I just want you, Rock. That's it." And even in Rocky 4, Rocky 5, it was like they lost everything. They said, "We're good." It didn't define them. They said, "We can get back and go get the other stuff." But how they went in, they were whole. All right. So as long as money doesn't define you, all right, you good. But ain't nothing wrong about going getting the money. But when you do have the wealth, how are you going in? And then when we talk about reinvesting, right? Reinvesting in financial things. But then when you get wealth, then you can reinvest in the continuance, like you said, being consistency in the good habits that you develop because you went in whole.
I got a question for both of you. You guys can listen too. What's the difference between having money and having wealth?
Yeah, go ahead, there.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Let's see what happens.
Honestly, I have no idea. The only thing I could say about wealth is I think that word to me, there's a spiritual component to it. And so if we're wealthy, it's less about money and more about how we feel in the present. There's more of a, Gene was talking in the last presentation about mindfulness. And I think to me, that's more about a state of mind than it necessarily is a number on a bank account.
Do you think that people can have money and still struggle to be wealthy because of what you're saying right now?
The world is unfortunately filled with miserable rich people. There's no shortage of them. You just look at the governments, look at our government, and you see that on every side. I'm not taking a side here. And so I think absolutely you can. And I'm not a biblical guy, but there's that old quote about the camel through a needle and whatever that was. But that whole thing, there's no question about that. If that becomes your obsession, that's not the obsession. And so maybe another part of wealth, to go back to your original question, is what are you doing with whatever resources you have, whether it's money or whether it's your health or whether it's family or whether it's your ability to do one thing or grow food or whatever.
Yeah, wealth is not necessarily the amount. That's the thing. Wealth is not necessarily. People's like, okay, wealthy. I have to be, some dollar amount. All right. Wealth is about wholeness in the continuum of wealth. With all those inputs, spiritual, physical, monetary. All right, all of that. All right. So wealth is not a dollar amount. All right. It takes money this is another thing. It's like people's like, oh, okay, I don't want any more money, or I want to cap out my money, or more money. At some point, money loses its. Hey, listen, the more money you can get, the more health you can get. All right, the more money you can get, the more you can invest in other things, other human beings, your family. Like, guess what costs? Money? Time. All right. People say, okay, I want experiences. Experiences over things, experiences over, purchasing and all this other stuff. All right. In the economic math of it, guess what costs money? It's in the economic model. Time does. So when you want to spend money you want to spend time with your family, you have to go get you some time. That costs money. Experiences cost money. So you can get more health and overall wealth in your continuum, by, earning more. It doesn't have now, like Phil said, you're not going to get money because it's defining you, saying the more money I have, the more worth that I have as a person. No, what you're saying is in the journey of life, if I'm going to get my, pursuing my aspiration in life, there's nothing wrong with getting more money because the money is going to fuel your overall attainment of wealth as a whole.
Absolutely. I want to touch on leadership a little bit. We were talking about that, and one of the things that we brought up, I shared some stuff with you guys, and I thought about in leadership, and I'll say this, and I'm gonna kind of move out of the way, but in leadership, I always think of the one of the most important things as a leader, in my opinion, is learning how to follow. If you think about it, like, most great leaders that we've seen have usually gotten themselves to a place in leadership by becoming a great follower. Let's see if that. And anyhow, doesn't that breeze feel amazing, right?
Finally, we got
I
one.
want to make sure everybody else is feeling that. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to be a great follower because it makes you and prepares you to be a more compassionate leader. Right? And there's a lot of leaders out there, we talked about this earlier, that the authoritative leader, like, just, you're going to do this because I said, right? But I want to hear your two thoughts on leadership and Phil, definitely want to hear from you.
Before I respond to that, because it's super important, I just wanted to plug Fitness Alpha again, because there are leadership qualities that go back to our fitness, how we feel about ourselves, how our confidence, self-efficacy, which is just a fancy way of saying whether we think we can do something or not. The way that other people respond to us, so others' social perception. When we're healthier, people respond to us in a different way than when we're not. Going back to your question, man, it's so profound what you said about following. And if you back up the lens on following, a bigger picture view of the same exact concept, or that's a part of, is just humility. So we have leaders with humility. They can follow. They can do all the humble things, right? They could take an L, because we all are going to take an L. So if they could take it, you're modeling for your people that, hey, we take the L, and then we get up tomorrow, and we come back, and we win the next one. If you are able to follow, if you're able to listen. Like, how many people have had a boss that never listened to anything they said? Everybody, exactly. Everybody here, right? How many have had several? You have a million of them. And, and that's like the authoritarian thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is the way it's going to be. I don't really care what you're gonna say. I don't really care what you say. Maybe I'll act like I will. Maybe I'll like give you that minute and then just move on. But I think all of the humility goes into leadership over a longer period of time. You can get away with the authoritarian thing for a minute, for a month or 6 months or whatever. But for a long term, if you're building relationships with your team and you want them to be there, you want them to be loyal to you, you leading by that example, whether it is, being willing to follow, being willing to listen, being humble, extraordinary.
Yeah, no, those are great points. With leadership, leadership comes with great responsibility, and it's about creating an environment. People will partner with you, will feel belonged and heard and inspired, and they will want to pursue their aspirations, if you create a good enough environment for them. This is culture, right? Were they in the place to where they can, extend their human condition? Does their personhood matter? Who they are, what they want to be. All right. So the leader has to create an environment in which that person can feel like they're flourishing as well, and then you'll get a quote unquote follower. All right. Here's another thing about leadership. Leadership, yes, it's about listening and having humility. And by the way, when we talk about humility and humbleness, there's a difference between humble and humility. Humility is about knowing your just place in the overall world. You don't have to, make yourself small, as far as being humble in order to, just make yourself small to make other people feel better. There's two totally different things. You can have confidence without arrogance. So there's a little sidestep on that. And leaders, you have to express some confidence, or the people that are following you, they're going to be like, if this person is not confident and don't know anything about themselves, how am I going to follow them? Do you want to follow somebody that's not confident about themselves, that doesn't know anything about themselves, or haven't investigated about themselves? You don't want to follow somebody that's arrogant or pompous. Another thing about leadership is having a responsibility that you are creating an environment about you. You are responsible for people's lives and providing direction. People do want direction. I want direction from the people that I'm inspired by. I come to, when I want to be inspired, when I come to my granddad, God rest his soul, or somebody that, inspired me or I respect, all right, I want some direction. I don't always want to be affirmed or patted on the back. I want guidance, So leadership comes with exploring oneself, doing your own work, doing that self-audit, knowing that leads to humility because you know your place in the world. You've been in that mirror. You've had some trial. You've had some triumph. You've ebb and flowed, and that's what contributes to that humility, to where you've formed some wisdom enough to provide some guidance that people want. So,
you use that term inspiring. You use it like 5 times just now.
yeah.
And I think we forget about that in leadership roles, that responsibility of being inspiring, that is the difference between, to steal Mark Twain's quote, the difference between the lightning bug and lightning, right? If you have a leader who believes in what you're doing and is able to inspire you, that's huge. I mean, that's right. We just add that to the list, So we got willing to follow, willing to listen, humble, and inspiring.
Yeah. I think about it as in leadership, like, you two are tremendous leaders. I think, what would you say? What are some of the? What's one or two of the most important lessons you have learned in your respective leadership roles?
I would say taking a genuine interest in whatever your people are working on. Everybody can tell. Everybody who's working for you can tell. If you're phoning it in, sorry to say it, they can tell.
Everybody, not just the smart ones, the dumb ones too, because the dumb ones all had, not every employee is an A plus, but every employee had parents, and so that's where they learn that, the genuineness, whether it's being phoned in or whether it's real. So they all have, even if they're not conscious of it, there's a gauge somewhere in the mind, in the back of the mind. There's a gauge, and even if you're not even conscious of it, it's reading it and it's affecting how you respond. And so I think that really engaging, really showing an interest. And I think the other thing for me that is hugely important is modeling the behavior. Do as I do, not do as I say, not as I do. It's do as I do. Because we learn, and when I say learn, I'm using a very specific definition of that. I'm talking about when you learn something, you repeat that behavior. That's sort of a behavioral definition of, operant conditioning, right? We receive some type of reward, we repeat that behavior, any type of conditioning. When we model something, and this actually comes from parenting too. When there's no more powerful force in the world, you could call it mimesis. That's like a hot word these days. Back in the day, Bandura called it social learning theory or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but when you model that behavior that you want your team to exhibit, I'm not sure there's anything more powerful than that over a longer period of time, over the day and the week and the month and the year.
I think when you said that compassionate leadership, I'm thinking about, because as we're talking about leadership and as, the people here that are leaders, you think about leaders that you've worked with or been around. And I think about one of my leaders that I had early in my career, first manager that I had that really took an interest in me. So I was 20 years old. My mom had just passed away. Wasn't, really just wasn't performing well at work. Something just happened. So I was really not in a good place. And this person, Kim was her name, took a genuine interest in me. She came to my mom's funeral, first of all. Then I'd come to work and I'd be kind of down or whatnot. She'd take me off the teller line, walk me around the bank, and we would just have conversations about life and this and that. She was at our wedding. She's just an incredible leader because she took the time and interest in me when she didn't have to. And when you look at people on the, being a teller, this is when I was a teller at the bank. That's basically, the entry level position. And she took time as the manager out to spend time with me. I'm saying all that to say this: when you have people in your organization that you're leading, the people that need you the most are probably the ones you see the least. And if you can give them those gems, like here we are, this is over 20 years ago, and I'm still impacted by what she did, and it made me a more compassionate leader because I've seen the compassion given to me and what it can do. So, I 1,000% agree with that part of it.
20 years ago.
Yeah,
over 20 years
over
ago.
20 years.
See?
And you're remembering it so vividly.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah.
So genuine interest, right? Because it stays with you. Compoundable asset, right?
Yeah.
Because it's still, if people can actually see themselves in, the results of the firm, so or the organization, using the organization.
Yeah.
So being heard. So I guess it goes back to genuine interest. That's genuine interest in maybe even personal growth. All right, but this is genuine interest in your ideas. I'm currently leading the Financial Therapy Association right now, and there's some pointed opinions going around, on a board. I'm sure some of you've been in leadership positions, and you guys, I don't agree with that, and I'm like, okay, we got to go around the horn and hear people's input, and so we have to process that, and it's patience as a leader, unselfishness, to process what's going on in the room, and now there's decisions that have to be made. There's no question about that at the organizational level. But if people can see that their input was taken, and considered, and then there's something in the organization, the output, and they said, okay, the leader or the organization took all this input in, jumbled it all up, and put a product out there, a result that encompassed us all. Again, we go back to inspiring. Somebody wants to be a part of that. We're processing right now, out in the media and all this other stuff, that people just want to quit their jobs, they want to leave, this, that, and the other, because we're having a deficient leadership roles, a deficient culture, a deficient environment. People's personhoods are not respected. Their ideas. So if a leader, genuine interest, right? Listening to input. So a leader has to listen to the input. If somebody can say, and then affirming that too, a leader can say, Julie came up with this idea. Warren, Tariq, came up with this idea, and we appreciate that person's input. And if somebody heard that, on a newsletter or somewhere, on a video snippet or something like that, I want to stay around in this firm, right? It brings a smile to people's face. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, as we're wrapping up here, I want to make sure that I give both of you an opportunity to. So the topic was health, wealth, and leadership, and as we're finishing up, what would you like? I wanted you to be able to drop some closing words for which one of those, what on any one of those topics, or all three if you want, but about a minute from each of you.
I got one thing.
Yeah.
So the behavioral economists love to talk about biases, confirmation bias, everything, confirmation bias, this, anchoring, loss aversion, all the big ideas of behavioral economics. And there's an idea, there's a model in behavioral economics called hyperbolic discounting that nobody ever talks about. And I was thinking about the audience today and how important a concept this is. And the basic idea here is that the further you go out in the future, the less you value something, right? So if I were to say to you, hey, here's a giant piece of cake today, or you can have your health 30 years from now, everybody's going to take the cake because we're not valuing, we're misvaluing, we're devaluing, we're discounting anything out in the future. And it's not just, we don't just do it with our health, we don't just do it with wealth, we do it with everything. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that we can't visualize our futures clearly. Maybe it just has to do with the fact that we're here in the present now, and that's where our immediate experience is. But this is a very powerful idea for advisors, to be able to think about, to be able to be aware of that idea, and then to be able to try to bring the future into the present. And so the way that I think about doing that is through vivid visualization. And I know that advisors do that, because my advisor, and I have the best advisor in the world, he might even be here right now, Bill Sweet is like the greatest guy ever. He had me do this. And it was like, hey, so what, my wife and I, what is it you guys want to be doing when you retire? What is it? And we wrote, it was like, we started the Beach House Journal or something like that, you know what I mean? And it was able for us to make it concrete in the present. That concept is incredibly important. It is not just part of a routine, like, hey, let's do that. That's something that can be brought up all the time, and that we can actually encourage our clients to do that, to revisualize, and to visualize in great detail. What's the color of that? Where is it? What does the sand feel like in your toes when you're standing outside on your back deck or back lawn? Yep. And the same applies to health too. You could do that too, like how, your activity level, and how would you like to appear, and how would you like to be able to move when you're 60 or 65 or 70 years old. Mm-hmm. So I would say pay attention to hyperbolic discounting, vividly visualize your future.
Yeah, I know we're out of time, so I can see the clock, but I'll just say this, life, health, and wealth are integrated, period. You cannot do one without the other. It is a continuum. Invest in them all. Not taking care of one will cause the other to be deficient. So treat it as a continuum, because that is that compoundable asset. That's all I got to say on that.
Thank you all for your time.